Today's show is brought to you by two of our favorite organizations, the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and the Allegheny County Library Association. September marks 10 years of their joint program, Love Your Library. It's really a county-wide celebration where your donation during the month of September will be partially matched and helps keep essential services going. So everything from books and materials to facility improvements and programs for all. If you use the library system, show your love and donate now at loveyourlibrary.org. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Heinz History Center and their newest exhibition, Pittsburgh's Hidden History. It is a cornucopia of curiosity, a magical menagerie of memory, and a little bit of this and that. There are flowery couches, relics from Kennywood, even a collection of shivs. If you listen to this show a lot, you know we are loving this. It is truly mind-boggling to see how the curators brought together such a wide range of rarely seen artifacts to tell Pittsburgh stories like never before. To buy your tickets and learn more, visit HeinzHistoryCenter.org.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh just launched this new anti-bias coalition. It's supposed to help make our city more inclusive. But what do you do if you feel like you have been discriminated against, especially if it's by somebody like your boss or your landlord? There is an office here in the city that can help, and it has actually been around for a very long time. So today, we are bringing back a conversation between host Megan Harris and Rachel Shepard and Chris Soltz from the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations to talk about their work and how you can get support. It's Monday, September 22nd. I'm Mallory Falk, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
Rachel, I have been reading about your office, and it's made me think back into my own job history, and I really wish that I had known you guys existed.
Same.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to teenage me just getting started in working a fast food job and the number of times that I was sexually harassed or threatened or, et cetera. And I had no idea. And I just let it go because, hey, I need this job because I just don't care to go and try to find another one right now. Mm-hmm. Or as you get older, when you need a job to pay your bills, you don't want to stir up trouble, even if you know that there's somewhere you can go. And, with us, at least we're a service that, we don't require an attorney, and you can have a non-legal representative if you choose.
And you're free. That's the part that I think will blow people away. How do you describe what you do? Like if you're talking to friends and family, because, the office, it has this big name and a really important mission.
So I typically will start by telling people that if anyone's experiencing discrimination where they work or with their housing, or if they're trying to get housing with any kind of public service, that they can come to us for help, and that we're a free service that's here to help them get a remedy to the situation that they're in. And we want to educate people on how to either do better if they've done something incorrectly, or to just educate people more on their rights in general so that they can advocate for themselves.
Chris, what about you?
I always get that question where, friends or family will ask me what I do, and then I tell them, and then they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
And so I have to explain it's civil rights enforcement. But, the name kind of extends back to a time that the main priority of our office was managing the relationships between different communities of people in the city. And our role has kind of evolved since then as the law has evolved. But, that's part of where the name originates from, which can be confusing for a lot of folks.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize until Rachel reached out to us that I'd heard the name of this office. I did not realize it had quite such a lengthy history here in the city of Pittsburgh. Predates the Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. What is it like for y'all to kind of carry that mantle now?
It's a bit different. So the way that Chris describes it as being a human relations office, it was a lot of intergroup tension matters before. There were a lot of public hearings, a lot of hate crimes, a lot of more community-based things. And I think in the last decade, maybe more, it's been more focused on individual discriminatory matters. So we've just, on a person-to-person basis, been addressing any kind of discrimination that they're facing at their job or, et cetera. So it's
not neighborhoods beefing. It's like an individual has been harmed or perceives that they have, and then you step in.
Yes.
Yeah. How do y'all define discrimination, at least in terms of how your office handles it?
Yeah, I have a fairly easy definition for it, actually, at least kind of like on a moral level, which is, discrimination is when someone does something to someone else that is unfair or unjust and based off of a quality or characteristic that person has that they can't change. So, that in the legal sense, that comes down to specific what we call protected classes, which, race, gender, sexual orientation, immigration status, all of that stuff. But deep down, that first definition, I think, is the most key and the most important. It's the sort of mainstay that guides all of our work.
Yeah, if someone does come to you and says, hey, this not great thing happened to me, but maybe they're not sure if it rises or they're just not sure what to do, where do you start? Where does that conversation begin?
So we'll assess for standing. We're looking at the who it involved, who is liable in the situation, where did it happen. Our jurisdiction is the City of Pittsburgh limits, so anything within the City of Pittsburgh municipality.
Like the harm happened here. They
Yes.
don't necessarily have to live here.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So any harm that happened within the city limits is our focus. And then we're looking at the time frame for when it occurred. So for our purposes, to receive a complaint with the commission, it's within 365 days of the most recent date of harm. So if you've been experiencing harassment for years, you can come to us based on whatever the last day that happened was, and we can look back as far as it goes. So we're looking at the who, where, the when, and then the what. So we're looking to see if it actually does match up with the categories of discrimination that we represent. And then if we're looking at some sort of tangible action that would violate the Fair Housing Act or the Pittsburgh City Code, we're looking at the Civil Rights Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act, then we can receive that complaint and start the intake process.
I'm just imagining you two and your personal relationships. If someone's, saying oh, my workplace is, like the way you do with friends, oh, my boss is terrible. Oh, this is happening. You two are really kind of a superpower in your friend groups, I'm sure, for helping people assert their rights. Can you walk through maybe some scenarios where, maybe common problems that y'all receive or hear about, and how you approach it? Again, kind of in those early stages for folks.
One of the most common ones that we used to get, and we still do get, but we do now have protections for survivors of domestic violence. If you had someone who you didn't want to show up at your apartment show up, and you had to call the police, and that resulted in some sort of negative action from the landlord, saying that, sorry, we just can't have those types of disturbances here. That's one that we used to get a lot of. And as I said, we still see it because we do have a lot of landlords who still aren't familiar with some of our laws in the most basic ways. And that's not always necessarily malicious, because, a lot of times we'll get people who just, they don't understand that our laws protect family status. And so they'll say, this apartment's not for kids. I'll show you another apartment. You can't do that, because that's steering. Steering is when you try to move somebody away from one apartment over to another apartment because of their protected status. Oftentimes in those cases, we're not here to put the hammer down on people. Mm-hmm. We're here to make sure that the laws are followed as they are. So when we get one like that, if the landlord says it's an honest mistake, I'm sorry, I didn't know, and there's no other behavior that we can attach to it that is overtly discriminatory, then we just educate. We make sure that people know and people understand.
Yeah. I mean, are they receptive to those messages? I can imagine how sometimes it might be a matter of education and sometimes it might be a matter of willful ignorance.
Right. Correct. And so we've certainly dealt with a number of cases where landlords are clearly violating the law on purpose. That's a totally different matter. We've had cases where employers are clearly violating the law on purpose. We've had cases of public access where, shop owners are clearly violating the law on purpose. There's no way they could not know that they were violating the law. And those more serious cases where there's more of a willful action that's going on, a willful discriminatory action, then we also keep that in mind when that happens too.
Yeah. Rachel, can you talk a little bit maybe about some of those more willful acts and how your office is able to step in?
Yeah, so the ultimate goal of the commission is to remedy whatever type of discrimination actually happened. We do offer mediation throughout our entire process so that we can offer folks a chance to sit down and have a conversation. A lot of times the complainants that come to us haven't had an opportunity to sit down with the people who have caused them harm and actually address it out loud. So it gives them an opportunity to do that in a space that is considered confidential. It doesn't make it back into their investigation. And it gives them that chance to be heard, which is really what a lot of them want to begin with, is just to be heard. And they feel like they haven't been considered in some of these processes. So they can ask for what they want during that process. A lot of people are looking for something as simple as an apology, which is often actually quite difficult to get. But
people get really stuck on like, I don't want to say I'm sorry. I didn't do anything wrong, that kind of thing.
Yeah, any kind of public acknowledgement, they're like, oh, wait, no, do we have to do that? Is that okay? Like, can we just say I'm sorry right here in the mediation? And sometimes that is fine. Sometimes they just literally want to hear it. But we look at things like monetary payments for any kind of damages to, back wages if somebody has lost an employment opportunity or a promotion opportunity, for their housing. If they've been assessed additional fees, we can get them the fees back for that as a part of the remedy. And, we've done things like have donations made to a particular organization or something like a commemorative plaque put up to just really give the person some kind of closure, positive closure to the situation. But when somebody is intentionally discriminating and we end up going all the way through an investigation, finding enough evidence to say that there is probable cause for discrimination, we make them sit down and have that conciliation process. And they have to participate. So we will do those more often than not in person. We want them to have to physically face the person that they've wronged.
This isn't a courtroom. Like, we're not sitting in a courtroom right now. This is an office of the city county building. But it does have a lot of the same legal jargon, and it sounds like it maybe has some of the same legal framework.
Yes.
Does it bind in the same way too? If you make a judgment, and are they beholden to that then?
So at the point of a cause finding, that's not a guilty verdict, right? So we're saying, hey, based on our investigation, we found enough to say that it's likely this happens. So as the commission, if we find that there's discrimination that's occurred, we want to try and remedy that, not just for the person that it's affected, but if there's a way to improve things for other people.
So the mediation is like kind of that early step where everybody can sit around the table and you can try to make sure everyone understands what's up, they can hear each other out, and maybe it can end there. Conciliation means that maybe that did or didn't happen. You have now found you think you know what happened, and they're gonna get that conversation then. But if they still aren't interested in remedying it, that's when it can go to a court hearing.
So we're an administrative body. We will hold a public hearing. It is much more formal. We will have a pre-hearing conference to set up dates for discovery and witness submission, subpoenas, motions.
See, now it sounds like it's like for real in a courtroom with a judge and stuff.
It does get very real, very fast. And unfortunately, it can be a very inequitable process for, a complainant who shows up and they don't have representation.
Are lawyers involved at that point?
So lawyers can be involved at any point throughout the process. They can even work with us to help draft a complaint in the very beginning. I'd say far fewer complainants have legal representation than respondents do. So the employers, depending on their size, have whole legal teams on their side, and then they can even hire outside counsel. So we try to make it as equitable a process as we can, but it is a very formal hearing process. We have commissioners that will sit on a panel. They will hear the case brand new. The only thing that they're given ahead of time is the names of the parties, so we can ensure that there's no conflict of interest. But it is very formal. We typically have them here at the commission offices, unless we have a very large number of witnesses wherein we've had to find a different location pretty quickly for some of those.
The picketers who stand outside Planned Parenthood health centers are bullies, plain and simple. They try to shame healthcare providers and volunteers and shame patients. They also spread lies and misinformation. More than 3,300 picketers stand outside Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania health centers each year. Well, October is National Bullying Prevention Month, so let's do something about it. This fall, PPWP is relaunching the Pledge a Picketer program, the easiest way to fight back directly against every one of these protesters outside. You select a monthly gift level, which is based on the number of picketers outside PPWP health centers. And for 1 year, you've ensured that every anti-abortion extremist outside also helps keep Planned Parenthood open. It's the perfect way to stand up to bullies compromising access to healthcare. Join the PPWP Pledge a Picketer program and be part of this powerful direct response to extremist attacks on healthcare. Visit bit.ly/PPWPCitycast. That's bit.ly/PPWPCitycast.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start that journey today? I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. Babbel's conversation-based technique quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. I've been practicing my Spanish with Babbel's AI conversation partner. I can choose my conversation topic and have a real-time dialogue. It's great at helping me think on my feet, and it's improving my pronunciation. Also, it's really easy to do anytime on my phone using Babbel's excellent mobile app. It's just one of the many fantastic Babbel tools for learning. Plus, Babbel has a real-time feedback, progress trackers, and handy visualizations, all of which make it really easy to stay motivated to learn. I want you to learn another language. So CityCast is teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So what do the remedies ultimately look like?
There are all kinds of different things that we can mediate, conciliate, whatever have you, for our complainants if we find probable cause or if the two sides decide to come together and work something out. That can be policy changes. We always have what's called public interest relief. And so if we find some sort of systemic issue that's involved in a housing case or an employment case or what have you, then we can seek our own changes to regulations and other things.
Yeah, so we can do monitoring. And that's one of the remedies for like someone who's done something a bit more egregious. If a housing provider has done something in the course of their assessing rental applications that is considered discriminatory, what we can do is implement a monitoring process where the commission will get monthly or quarterly reports from the housing provider to show, okay, how many applications did you receive this month? How many of them were people of color? How many of them were Caucasian? The number one thing that we see across both employment and housing complaints is disability filings. And it's a lot about reasonable accommodation and modification. So that's one of the things we could monitor as well. Like if you received an accommodation request, how did you handle it?
I mean, how does this process differ from maybe like a civil or a criminal court proceeding, like in terms of what you're able to do for folks and I guess the outcome as well?
So we can't send people to jail. There are no criminal penalties for our process, which does help serve to make it attractive to some folks who, the prison abolitionists, people like that, who I've talked to out in the community who have asked that question. I've been able to tell them there are no criminal penalties, and they like that. They find that fits with their idea of how the justice system should work.
They want a remedy, but they don't want someone, having a mark on their record forever.
Yeah, exactly. We're not trying to just punish people for the sake of it. We're trying to get actual changes to occur in the way that people interact with each other and the way that people have an understanding of each other as other human beings who deserve respect.
Do you find that the folks that you work with ever worry about backlash if if they try to pursue something through this office?
They do. If you go to your manager and you report that you're being harassed, that's a protected activity. And if you go and report and then all of a sudden start experiencing, negative effects from that, where your shift is suddenly changed or you're getting reduced hours or you're even terminated because, well, we don't want you stirring up trouble. Like, this is just the culture here. You can deal with it. People can experience those retaliatory effects. And while we can't take much in immediate action on those, we can receive complaints that add retaliation to them. And it is a violation. And I don't want to say it's like a slam dunk, but it's a lot easier to prove at that point because there's something tangible that happened to them.
A lot of times when people come to our office, it's because they're either completely fed up and don't really care that much about the outcome anymore, or they've already been terminated, or they've been evicted or something like that. And so the outcome doesn't matter as much. More commonly, they'll have a hard time getting witnesses to speak for them because those witnesses are worried about retaliation. So, just know that that if you feel like you have something, but you also have witnesses who are afraid to speak up, then we'll also protect those witnesses.
And we don't take any particular case more seriously than another. They're all going to get the same level of investigation, and it happens much quicker. Like if we were to go to court.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for all the stars to align for a court calendar to come together.
And I've had a lot of conversations with elected officials in this area, state level, city level, and even with them, there seems to be a lack of awareness of the existence of our office. And there's a fundamental worldview, a challenge in terms of people's worldview here. And that folks who tend to get to make the laws, when they want to pass new discrimination protections, anti-discrimination protections, civil rights laws, the type of victim they're imagining is someone who is going to be like one of their friends, which is to say someone who is not going to have a hard time lawyering up and pursuing their case through the standard court system. In reality, a lot of the people who tend to fall victims to some form of discrimination are people who don't have the resources for something like that. A harder time navigating the process, can't wait for the oftentimes months and months and months that a court process can take. Not that our cases can't take months, unfortunately, sometimes they do. But especially now, with the federal agencies no longer being reliable enforcers of civil rights codes and civil rights laws, now more than ever, we need to have that awareness out there that our office exists and that people can come to us, especially those folks who, as I said, more often than not are usually going to find themselves the victims of discriminatory practices.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. President Donald Trump has said recently that DEI itself, diversity, equity, and inclusion, just those concepts are discrimination. I mean, what is it like trying to do this work in tandem with that message coming down from our federal government?
Well, that's the big question, right, that we're facing right now.
Is anything that you do dependent on the federal government, or are you protected by being in Pittsburgh under a local agency?
So the answer is yes.
that you are protected.
No. Yes to both of those.
Yeah.
So,
yes to both.
Yeah. So we have federal partners who we work with. We traditionally have had a relationship with where they provide some funding. They provide us with some cases. If people go to EEOC, say, instead of coming to us first, then they move those down our chain.
That's the Equal Opportunity Employment
Correct.
Commission.
Right, yeah. Now that's going to be a less reliable relationship, but our powers and protections are provided in the city code. So we'll continue to be here, even while that relationship is contentious. In terms of the larger conversation, I think that a lot of this stems from sort of a fundamental misunderstanding of the federal protections and the legal protections for civil rights are, and sort of how all of this that we have right now came to be. So when the Civil Rights Law of '64 was passed,
which was after the formation of this office.
Correct, yes. But that with that came the formation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and some of the other bodies. And at that time, President Johnson signed an executive order saying that because anti-discrimination was now the law, every federal department was now required to take affirmative action. That's the statement that was used to ensure that that law is followed, and that companies that have federal contracts with the government are following the law. In the 80s and 90s, when Rush Limbaugh was all the rage, affirmative action was the big boogeyman, right? And the assumption at that time was that with affirmative action came quotas and all of these other initiatives. Never been quotas. That is not a thing that has ever existed in terms of federal enforcement. The only federal enforcement we have is based off of our protected classes, and those protected classes are not, black. They are not woman. They are not, et cetera, et cetera. It's, did this discrimination happen on the basis of race? Did this happen on the basis of sex or sexual orientation? Did this happen because you came here from another country? There's no quotas, and there never have been. But there are plenty of people who, because they have their own agenda, are willing to go on TV and lie to people about what's really going on. And so DEI is just new words are scary.
I think it's important to keep saying those words aloud: diversity, equity, and inclusion. The acronym, to me, just you forget what it means. And so to hear that DEI in any capacity is a bad thing, I think sort of weakens what it means. We should just keep saying it. I want to keep saying it.
Right. And so after a while, affirmative action lost its punch. It couldn't scare people as much anymore. And then we move on to new terms, and then finally we're at DEI as the new term that scares people, because it is one of those terms that it can mean whatever the person who hears it wants it to mean. But it's all the same. It all just goes back to the protections that have been in place since 1964.
Yeah, and there are systemic policies that are been rolled back, but that doesn't mean that the systemic discrimination that went along with that and the effects of that have gone away. Having a higher interest rate because you are a person of color and having no actual basis for risk in that area is discriminatory. And these are still things that are happening today. So whether we have things like the Fair Housing Act or the Community Redevelopment Act, and these things are still happening and people are still being marginalized. They're still feeling those effects.
We're talking about the sort of a standard minimum of what people should be able to expect for being human beings. But, I assure people that these laws aren't providing anything to anyone that anyone else is not getting. It's just making sure that people are able to get the same legal protections and same basic standard of living protections that their neighbor has.
Yeah, I mean, do you imagine that your work might change under the current administration? I can imagine you might be fighting more disinformation, that fewer people might come to you, but also that more people might come to you, which I don't know how big your staff is. That could be its own thing, its own, cascading influence.
So no matter what happens, we're here for it, and we're going to continue doing the work. So regardless of what's going on the federal level, the protections here in Pittsburgh will not be rolled back. The protected classes will stand. There has never been a time where they removed a protected class from the city code, and we don't intend to have that start now. If we lose our federal contracts or grants or what have you and lose that support, yes, it'll be detrimental. We have a staff of 8. 4 of those are investigative staff, and we've had them pushed to their limits in the past couple of years on various occasions just because of staff turnover and just the regular way of things. But we're here for it. And if we have to adjust to an onslaught of additional complaints, we will. And if we see an uptick in intergroup tensions and community tensions that are happening out there, then we will address that. And we want people to know that we're here as a resource just as much now as we were before January 20th.
Chris, do you want to close us out? If someone's listening to this and they feel like they might qualify, but they're also nervous to do it, what would you say to them?
Do it. We'll make sure that you're covered. If you feel nervous, we'll make sure that you're protected and that any witnesses that you have are protected. If you feel that you have been subjected to unfair or unequal treatment, and you think that you're the first person or the only person in your workplace that this is happening to, you're probably not. This has probably happened before, and unless somebody does something, it will continue to happen. If you feel like you're the only person that your landlord is singling out, you're probably not. If you feel like you're the only person who has had a bad interaction with the police in your neighborhood, you're probably not. If you feel like you're the only person who's ever been yelled at in a store that you walked into because of some characteristic that is a part of you, but you can't control, I guarantee you're probably not. And so the only way to make sure that these things end is to take action, and we'll be there to help.
Chris, Rachel, thank you both for what you're doing here in Pittsburgh, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you think you've been discriminated against, there is a form on the Commission's website to get the process started. We will put it in our show notes. You can also get help with that over the phone. Their number is 412-255-2600. And if you want to learn more about that new anti-hate, anti-bias coalition here, it is called Stand for All Pittsburgh. It's made up of about 20 local groups, places like Casa San Jose, the Bhutanese Community Association of Pittsburgh, and the 1027 Healing Partnership. We will also drop a link in our show notes with more information about the kind of work they plan to do and how you can get involved. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. We'll talk to you then.
We are human relations, not human resources.
The Commission on Human Relations.
Commission on Human Relations, yes.
And it does matter what elevator you ride in the city county building. Just note that for the future.
Ross Street side,
Street,
guys.
yeah.
Ross Street side.